Welcome to the Fallen Frequency Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Fallon, your guide through the world of music, art, and living life with a vibrational twist. Now, I've got some exciting guests lined up today, and we're going to dive deep into their journeys and insights. But before we kick things off, let's remember that life is like a song. It's more fun when you dance to your own beat. So buckle up and get ready for a harmonious ride. Welcome to the Fallen Frequency Podcast, where the vibes are high and the conversation is groovy. Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of the Fallen Frequency Podcast. I am very excited to share today's guest, Victoria Rose. She is a powerhouse of a woman. I am very excited to share her with you all because I met her back in about 2018, and I was working with her. She was assisting a shaman in different ceremonies and really was a huge part of my process of healing and really helping me understand the power of, what it means to reclaim myself and get back into my heart space. She also is a professional birth doula, so she really understands a lot about natural birthing and the importance of women's health, their cycles, their ability to get into their inner self and their power, which is a huge thing that I really am passionate about sharing with everyone, as well as men's health and our empowerment as well, but really helping us understand the balance of the masculine feminine dynamics and polarities. And so I get to share a little bit about my experience in our catch up about me leaving New York and what that looked like for me and why I did that. And, the intuitive process that I followed, as well as her own intuitive process as the lockdown started to happen in 2020. And we go through a wild ride of really, reflecting to each other our growth and our experiences. And it's incredible because we talk a lot about the importance of plant medicines in both of our lives, but also how many people don't really have the proper tools to integrate it and use it as a tool rather than a crutch. And we talk about how that looks and what you can do to be more aware to maybe use these things that can alter your perception and help you, but also, if not properly integrated, can actually do quite the opposite. And I also get to share, my journey of becoming a Czech practitioner and studying with Paul Czech, as well as her experience moving to Portugal. And we really talk about, what it means to call certain places home and how to properly feel well and really listen to our nervous system when it comes to where we live and our own inner health. And there's so much. It's a very wide-ranging conversation, and like I said, it's us catching up. So it's almost like you're a fly on the wall experiencing, two people that are on the process of our own journey and growth to healing. And I'm really excited because she just shares incredible experiences as a birth doula, and really the knowledge she carries about epigenetics and our perinatal experiences, women's cycles, and so much more. So really excited for you to listen to this one, and I'll catch you on the other side. I believe there was I'm trying to think. I think it was one ceremony where you were there.
Okay, yeah, it might have been a solstice gathering that we did, right? In June-ish?
Yeah.
2017? Okay. Wow, so much from there.
Yeah.
Wow. It's really good to see you. Really, I felt really grateful that we started exchanging messages because I see you out there and I see you in your world, and it's just, this is the time of our life, and we can talk to and spend time with whoever we choose. And it always just fascinates me who comes onto our path, right?
Right. I mean, I feel like we have especially when we're opening ourselves to whatever
our souls want to lead us to, we invite all these different teachers. I kind of remind myself all the time that each person, even if it's a random interaction at a store, is almost some type of person that even just our energetic connection at that very moment. But then, of course, the people that we get to share these deep, intimate conversations, it's like an even deeper level of multidimensional amazingness.
It's so true. I'm so curious where this conversation goes and I'm so glad that you decided to record it, because I'm like, man, there's so many different directions that it could go.
Yeah. So, I mean, what have you been up to, like, since then, or what the kind of a background of like what has led you up to this point?
Wow, it feels like a big backdrop, but I'll do my best. I'm also like always curious when someone asks me, "How are you?" or "What's it been like?" What answer comes through at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it so depends on what's going on in my life at that moment, I guess, for all of us, how we kind of relay our story. But all right, in a nutshell, well, I last saw you in June 2019. And so I had a really great summer. It was 2019, right?
Yeah.
So a lot began to really shift big time in November, December-ish of 2019. In December 2019, I would have been going to the Amazon, where I was spending 6 months of the year, from December until June. So I was kind of in alignment with that whole normal annual routine. And well, my former partner, I think you know him well. So we uncoupled during that time. That was a major time of endings and new beginnings and expansion and growth, and essentially the whole trajectory of everything just did like a before before like
all the
even before shit went down. So I went to the jungle as planned, and I had some of the most life-changing experiences of my life, I would say, which I probably said that a lot of times to a lot of people, but this time in my life definitely stands out as a radical moment in time. I was working at Rediscovering Research and Healing Center as a facilitator there. And so we were leading retreats, 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week healing retreats for people that were coming from all over the world. And I began to have some like major ceremonies that were almost unlike many. I've had similar ones, but this was like immensely strong, where basically I began to experience the complete deconstruction of everything that we've ever known through my physical body. Seeing that like all of the systems as we know them are coming to a halt. And seeing a lot of old codes, for lack of a better word, kind of like being terminated. And simultaneously, I was like receiving information from what I interpret would be kind of the original libraries from the beginning of time.
Wow.
And what I was seeing and what was coming through were like thousands and thousands and thousands of years back in time. And so I had a few ceremonies whilst working, that were like this. And they were they were pretty tremendous. At the end of the ceremonies, I would try to explain to my fellow facilitators, and I would be like, no, you guys don't understand. Like, this is huge what's happening. Like, thousands and thousands and thousands of years worth of stuff is coming to an end. And I think, it was really hard for people around me to understand. I mean, I couldn't, it was too much even for my entire system to compute and process. But it was so strong and so clear. And the people around me at the time were just like, oh, wow, it seems like you had a really big night. And I would be like, no, you guys don't understand. Like, something big is about to happen. And this was my interpretation at the time. And then basically, Adam, what ended up happening on my internal experience was that I had a major inner guidance that I needed to leave the jungle. And that faced me with something I didn't feel ready for, actually, because I was committed there in my work. I had an incredible position. I was deeply immersed in all that I was learning and all that I was part of. And I walked through, the process of prioritizing what it was that was so clear. But I needed to be the initiator of that self-directed change and let go, but really pass through and feel and experience the feeling of letting everyone down and really coming face to face with the reality that no one else was going to make this decision for me.
Yeah.
And so although I was having these big ceremonial experiences and everything was saying, you need to leave the jungle now. Of course, I couldn't really, at least I didn't feel as though it felt more right for me to really accept responsibility for my personal experience at the time, which was that I was uncoupling with my partner and we were working together, and that was quite overwhelming. And so I made it all personal. That felt like the right thing to do, because we have insights and messages and things like this in ceremony, but at the end of the day, at least the way that I tend to orient and relate to these things is that it really is up to our interpretation and what do we really know. I mean, at that time, I wasn't thinking like, hey, the world is about to end in 5 days.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, so I made it very personal, and that was how I needed to relate to things at the time. And I left the jungle. I did end up initiating that and making that move. And I think it was about a week and a half or less that I left. It was March by then. And the entire world went on lockdown. And so inevitably, actually, everybody had to leave the jungle. And, and I was on a boat just before that.
Talk about listening to your inner guidance.
It was such an affirmation of, listen, you just listen to your intuition and you do not need a reason, because at that time I had so many personal things going on, and it's like, respond to what is obvious in your life. At least this was my affirmation, and this was what got reinforced in me through that experience was, you don't need to second guess your intuition. You just listen and you follow and you trust that inner guidance. And you don't need to know why. Actually, it doesn't matter, because clearly something much bigger was going on than I knew at the time. We didn't know anything about what was going on in the world, in the jungle. We had absolutely no reception. I remember my brother sent me a message. He had a cold or something during that time, and he said, he's quite a bit younger than I am. And he said, but thankfully it's not Corona. And I thought, the hell is that? Like, he must have made a typo. I have no idea what that is. So life has had a way of being like very loudly putting me on the right track at different times. And this was definitely a moment, and it didn't come without challenge, but it has come with an incredible amount of growth. And I've been moving forward ever since. I have felt called to come to Portugal for quite a while. For a couple of years, I began to see in some of my ceremonies in the jungle how the circulation of life energy on the actual planet is kind of like moving and relocating. And Portugal was standing out as one of the places that a lot of energy is gathering in. And again, I took that also with a grain of salt, because I really don't know much about those things. But I came to visit last November, which is 1 year ago, and I'm still here. And
Wow.
there seems to be an incredibly like magnetic energy here that is so many people are gravitating towards Portugal. It's actually amazing.
That's really cool. Well, especially I feel like, I think throughout our life, I'm realizing that there's these different touch points, especially even on the globe, where our own energetic field is able to be heightened, and all of our awarenesses and our ability to open up our heart and really live in our truth can be heightened by these different locations on the planet, depending on where we are in our life. And
absolutely. And I'm glad you actually said that, because it could have been a very personal, it obviously was a very personal thing, and there might be something wider that somebody else who maybe listens to this one day can tell me about. But definitely when I arrived here, I entered a really creative zone, and all of my visions and all of my aspirations just started to really move and get mobilized, and connections and channels were opening just like without me getting off my chair. And it just continues. So just listening, I'm really happy to be here. I hope you come visit sometime.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely plan on coming over to the European countries sooner than later, especially like Portugal and France, and places that I feel there's something for me to learn and understand, especially as my dad is French, and coming from that, and even there's possibilities of Algerian and Moroccan in my family. And so I definitely feel like there's certain codes for me to just be able to accept in my body and in my physical, mental, emotional self, to just understand where I came from, as far as being a human being, but especially just my lineage. I feel like there's a lot of aspects of just that whole part of the world seems, I don't know if it's just my perception, but it seems like they're more in touch with the reality of actually like human connection and connecting with nature. And, there's, of course, we're being ruled by a modern society and all over the globe at this point, but I feel like there's still certain cultures that are a little more in touch with the original nature of what it means to be connected.
One of the things I love about here is that even, at least here in Portugal, even the cities are developed for humans. Like many of the streets you don't walk down, and even the ones that you do, the sidewalks are big, and there's stone, and there's benches everywhere, and there's beautiful lampposts and lighting everywhere, and a lot of the actual, it's a lot of cobblestone, and the actual ground is made into seating for humans. And everybody walks, whether you're 100 years old or 90 or 19, everybody's walking. People aren't, struggling to get around. So, like, it's pretty awesome, actually. It's really there's a different level of interaction happening here and like engagement with life, you know?
Yeah, well, and I feel like people talk about the blue zones of these different places in the world where people are so naturally healthy, and they don't need to learn about all of the things that we study necessarily, because they're just living in a natural harmony with their bodies and their minds, and being able to have connection, but also get physical movement, go grab your water down the street, like just in touch with the groundedness of the earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. There's something really special about Portugal. I don't know if it's, it's mainly a coastal country.
Mm-hmm.
But people, at least to me, feel so relaxed and so kind. Living here is really easy. It's like,
yeah, that's beautiful.
It's like 350 days of the year sun as well.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like
high, but it's gorgeous. People are alive.
yeah, I mean, I feel like when that's part of, I think, leading and learning to listen to our own inner voice, because our body is consistently communicating with us. And I feel like when our nervous system feels actually at ease somewhere, I mean, that makes a big difference in so many levels, that I feel like so much of our society is programmed to not even think about that. It's just, yeah, being in a place like that sounds like it's very healing for you. That's amazing.
Yeah. So what's been moving in you? What were some of the original things that like inspired us to like there was something there that
I remember, I mean, we initially connected because, well, I was connecting with a lot of animal spirits. I remember and something I realized throughout my life as a child, especially if I think back to even the work I did in ceremony. I mean, as a child, I was so in touch with animals and nature that I was basically talking to them. But as I grew older and more programmed, I thought, oh, that's just, cute little Adam. He just thinks he's talking to animals. And, I remember being a kid and walking around being a T-Rex, or a lion or whatever. And really, when I think about more, I've evolved and become open-minded and learned about indigenous wisdom. Those are practices of connecting to our guides and different spirit guides and things that actually lead us. And even just the archetype of an animal, even if for people that are not necessarily or still learning more about their own spiritual nature, it's like these animals have these incredible messages for us. And I think the first night of ceremony, I had an experience with the jaguar, and I knew nothing of the totem or the importance of it in the lineage of the Shipibo tribe or the Amazon. So I think I remember at least our initial connection of you coming up to me after I had shared in the sharing circle the next day, an integration circle, that that's really potent and powerful. That doesn't happen for the first time for certain people. And yeah, so that I remember that was kind of how we at least initially connected. And that was just such a wild time for me too, because I was listening to my inner voice on this deep level. I think a year prior to that, I had been listening to this podcast with Gabor Mate talking about the importance of childhood psychology and development, but also the importance of addiction and understanding how psychedelics, especially ayahuasca, can be very helpful for people in addictive patterns and stuff like that. And I just got obsessed with the subject and was learning and just wanted to know more. And it ended up being like about a year of studying that. And hilariously enough, I was just thinking, maybe it'll present itself at the right time, and I'll just figure out, how I will, because I was just craving like an experience with an actual really nice set and setting, because I feel like it's really easy, I had mushroom trips and things like that as a youth, and they were still very powerful. But the more I learned about set and setting and how that's so important for you to actually have the inner healing and the benefit, especially led by a proper practitioner or a shaman or someone that really understands the plants and the psychology of humans. But it was just so funny because I was looking into all that and just like daydreaming about it. And then one day I was playing a corporate gig, and I had a band leader that I totally perceived as this like uptight, business type guy. And we're on the break, and he's like, "You ever do ayahuasca?" And I was like, I almost thought it was like a trick question. Like I'm like, why is this guy asking me that? I was like, no, but I have actually really wanted to learn about that and do that and go down the Amazon and learn about it. And he was like, oh, well, I actually know like an amazing shaman, that isn't like not too far of a travel, and you can actually, maybe I can connect you. And I was like, okay, wow, I would love that. I'm interested. I'd love to learn more. And it was so interesting because I had really not even talked to anyone outside of me about it. This was this internal process where I was just like following my intuition. And around that time too, I was doing this cleansing diet. And I remember looking at the whole dieta and everything that you're supposed to do to prepare for ceremony. And it was like I was literally already doing the dieta. It was super strange. And then it just happened that a ceremony was coming up in 2 or 3 weeks. And so I signed up and I just went on faith. I showed up and I remember I think James was one of the first people I talked to. And just even his grounded presence and just the embodiment he has of like the masculine and feminine and that balance really was like very comforting at that moment, because I was just kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I'm just going on a whim, trusting that this is all going to work in my favor. But through that experience, and of course, many, multiple experiences after, and starting to work with you guys and Angel and just sit in ceremony and get to play music for certain ceremonies, that made me realize this whole epiphany outside of what my original dream was, of just, being a musician and playing for all sorts of artists all over the world and doing touring and things like that. And luckily having an early exposure to that at 18 years old. But I had this whole dream, narrative of being at the top of that and doing deep stuff in the music industry. And not that that's changed, but what the medicine was showing me was that there is this healer aspect in me that wanted to be explored, and that like my hands even were healing hands and things like that, and stuff that of course I took with a grain of salt, because I'm like, obviously these are messages from multi-dimensional selves and beings and different things, where it's like learning to ground it in and actually figure out what it's really trying to channel you to do. Mm-hmm. But I just had this instinct of wanting to know, how can I become more of a healer, and it's legit and not someone that just reads books, but actually is like a practicing healer of some sort. And I knew music was part of it. And then it just so happened that I was listening to a podcast around that time with Aubrey Marcus, and he was interviewing Paul Chek. And Paul Chek is like this incredibly integrated human being that has been through an entire hero's journey. But he's been in the holistic health industry for 35, 40 years and trained everyone from Michael Jordan to Laird Hamilton to all these incredible athletes, but also has this deep foundation in shamanic practices and understanding, how the mental, emotional aspects relate to the posture and the organs and glands, and, basically how to really ground in a lot of this information that a lot of spiritual people pick up on, but actually getting it physically to happen in the body in a way that people are really rooted in themselves. Mm-hmm. Able to I feel like even for me at that time, I was so focused outwardly on like, how can I help other people, that I wasn't actually allowing myself to be focused on myself, and really even just going through that. And I basically became obsessed. I was just like watching Paul Chek video after Paul Chek video, which was hilarious. But then, because he was just giving me so much insight into a lot of the experiences I had throughout my childhood, everything, from, because he goes deep into infant development and childhood psychology and Jungian understanding of the unconscious and subconscious and the soul. But he has a really great grounded way of talking about it, and all of these things just were putting a lot of pieces together for me. And it basically got to the point where I was spending so much time watching that in the middle of, being a musician and playing 4 or 5 nights a week in New York City. And then, of course, occasionally being up at the temple and, and being around you all, which even just the energetic container you guys had really made me feel like, wow, that whatever that feels like is light. And my nervous system has been like caged almost from living in this like city environment. And I just made the jump. Basically, I just decided, I heard an advertisement one day on one of the podcasts that was like, they're taking academy students and they're now having online programs where you actually do all the prerequisites and training online, and then you meet up for 5-day intensives to actually get the certification and learn from these incredible mentors and teachers. And so I just, once again, trusted my soul and was like, okay, everyone was like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be a musician. Like, and I was like, I know I'm still a musician, but for some reason I feel really called to do this. Like, just to, especially they have a program that is, you're learning to become a holistic lifestyle coach, which is understanding how people work on a physical, mental, emotional level, and how to like help people live their dream in their highest level, but also in approaching it with understanding of eating good nutrition and, all of the different ways of supporting the earth while supporting yourself by actually feeding yourself good quality nutrients from organic farms and supporting the farmers, all these different little micro aspects. But then they also teach on the other side the integrative movement specialism, which is like understanding the spine and how that relates to the posture and how that relates to even the mental emotional, and how to actually correct people's posture and get them out of pain, and even train athletes and things like that. But just going into that like almost blindly was such a trip. And it led me to actually start to really study and get to that practice. Yeah, that just started leading me down this deep journey, because that was 2019, near the end of 2019, entering into 2020. And so all of the prereqs were leading up, and I was really just like going so deep into it. Like, it just felt like so natural for me to study as much as possible. And to just understand that stuff, just really for my own healing too, to just really integrate, because the medicine was showing me so much stuff, but it was showing me that I really need to be grounded and integrate a lot of this information rather than just going back into the medicine space. And it just, then that led me to going to San Diego in the beginning of 2020, where I had my first class, Holistic Lifestyle Coach Level 1 at the Czech Institute. And somehow I didn't think this whole time, because, I'm around all these amazing musicians and stuff, but they're not really understanding why I'm so obsessed with this stuff. And then I didn't even consider the fact that everyone in my class would be very similar to my archetype of wanting to understand, how can we heal the earth, in nature? How can we connect with each other? How can we eat good food and support, all of the things that really help us thrive as humans? And so just being in that energy field, once again, almost like it was like another version of being around all of y'all in ceremony. I was like, wow, this feels really, really good, to the point where I felt like I was finding more soul family and people that just really understood me. You don't have to catch anyone up on what you're talking about. You're just talking and enjoying the presence of other human beings, and just, going deep with people. And just through that class, and just even the magic of the teacher, and the teacher's also a shaman as well, that trained with Michael Harner. And so she's incredible. And just that whole environment made me realize, like, wow, I really am here to learn and go even deeper into this field. And at the time I had some gigs lined up in LA and all that stuff. And then the lockdowns happened. And so the lockdown happened. I had just met my soul family, and I was in LA that I was supposed to do some gigs, but they kind of got canceled. And I had been talking about moving to California for like 3 or 4 years, actually. Before that, just ending up there on tours. And it was hilarious because then I just decided, I was like, I don't want to go to my cold apartment and sit inside. And I was in sunshine all day. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make this leap of faith, and I'm going to stay here and just see what unfolds. And it's just, ever since that, I have not looked back. I mean, I had my friends move my stuff into a storage unit, and I just literally, I didn't even go back. I literally just stayed. And I just started building, and, it's been nothing but life school, of course, just being able to not only start practicing with individual clients, but, still playing music and seeing how that intersects. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the visions I was getting in that medicine space, and even as I was like evolving more into the practice of becoming a practitioner, I was starting to see that there was this gap for an integrated health system that would help musicians and people that are traveling, and artists that are so in their head a lot of the time, or in their, or maybe even in their heart all the time, but they're not really necessarily embodied physically. Mm-hmm. And so suffering and getting, stuck in traps of addiction and all sorts of things that, a lot of the time are connected to trauma. But it just was really enlivening, because all of a sudden I was really getting this clear vision of like, oh, wow, I like just trusted my soul to lead me where it led me. And it's just showing me consistently, with all sorts of synchronicities of like, okay, this is, I guess, where I need to be. I would have never expected it in most of my life to be doing what I'm doing now, but it really just led me in this incredible journey. And yeah, I've just been, working on all sorts of programs and different aspects of how I can make a lot of this information accessible, while still, doing my practice. And I've been doing a lot of market research and working for this organic grocery store called Erewhon, and just using that as a platform to meet people and just get back into the social aspect. Because it's crazy to go from 4 to 5 nights a week of playing music to maybe playing like once every couple months. But I feel like just the quality of life and my own, practice, because a lot of what I think the school teaches is about, of course you can help others, but you have to live it. You have to be an example of it. So for me, a lot of the first year moving here was just like, okay, I'm going to dedicate myself to getting clear and being, on a good regimen of taking care of my body and nutrition and mental mindset and all of that stuff. And of course, I feel like there's so many different experiences for people in 2020, but it was like one of the best, most transformative years of my life. Like, just literally went out on a limb and just like took a leap of faith, and yeah, it haven't turned back since, and just diving deeper and deeper, and yeah, just continually learning from all these experiences and mentors and people that just keep showing up in my life.
Wow, Adam, like you touch on so many things. I just love listening to you, and I hope I can remember some of the things, a couple of the things you said are just so important and meaningful. This piece on embodiment and, the question of how do we actually integrate the wisdom and the teachings and the insight from a medicine like ayahuasca into our lives, into our bodies, into our work and our relationships. This is an ongoing inquiry, it's an ongoing conversation, and it's actually, it's now becoming such a conversation that it's kind of not easy to find the words, actually. And I can hear by what you're saying and how it's transmitting through you that you are doing this. You are in it, and you're doing it. You're doing it. You are. It's a really big conversation. It's one of the main things that I inquire with the plants, with myself in my life, through all of my work, is, I tend to feel like there's so many ways that we are conditioned, and how our westernized conditioning is something that we bring into these indigenous traditions in ways that oftentimes result in us totally missing the point completely.
Yeah.
And it's really, I think it's really amazing what you've been doing. And
well, I appreciate that. I think especially, it was very effective in, of course, being around, Gaia and you and James, just especially even working with James. Just his level of understanding of the psyche, and the being very in alignment with a lot of the stuff I've studied and understood about, Carl Jung's work, and all of these different ways of understanding, like, what our soul is trying to tell us through dreams or these interpretations.
mm-hmm.
And how do we make it actually a physical reality? Because I feel like there is this amazing renaissance of, like, understanding psychedelic research and understanding the medicines and what the plants have to teach us.
Mm-hmm.
But it does concern me, because I feel a lot of people don't have the actual resources to ground a lot of these experiences in, and are just sometimes in the jungle even more scattered than they were, because they have all these incredible insights, but they don't know how to put them into practice.
Totally. And I want to go back to how I started, which was having this realization that I needed to leave the jungle. That was the plants, that was my inner wisdom guiding me, that had nothing to do with the jungle. I've been back many times since, and I'll continue going back, regularly for my own personal development and growth, but just not working at that capacity anymore. But what I want to say is that definitely, like, a lot of what has inspired my work in the realm of birth has been beginning to notice that, okay, wait, here, recognizing my peers, who not all of my peers are, going to the jungle or even sitting in ceremonies, but the ones that I know are doing very deep, meaningful inner work on themselves, then go to, say, create families and go through the entire gamut of societal warfare on birth. It was just so confusing to me, because I thought, okay, wait, the highest possible level of integration, I think, is to actually not pass this on to our children.
Yeah.
So, I began to actually ask on deeper levels and inquiring more deeply, how do we really, not just integrate it into our bodies, how can we assist this to organize correctly inside of our systems?
Yeah.
Because if the system itself is completely disorganized, and then you load a whole bunch of information on it, and it's up to this system how it relates to it, how it processes it, how it interprets it, all of it. It's still something outside doing something too, and it's not integrated. It's, and we talk about indigenous tradition. This wisdom is indigenous in ourselves.
Yes.
This wisdom is indigenous in us. Birth wisdom is indigenous in us, but our entire life from before we were born was poked and prodded and managed and monitored and done to us. So now we have an entire society going and sitting with a medicine like ayahuasca. Ayahuasca, that is the double helix serpent DNA. I think she's inherent in each and every one of us. It is the life force.
Yeah.
Prana, mana, chi, kundalini, whatever you want to call it. Ayahuasca embodies that.
Yeah.
And so I think, we have a very deep cultural wound of separation. We were separated from our moms at birth or near birth. We were separated from our moms before birth because mom was separated from her body and therefore from us. So this is like when we talk about the mother and those original imprints and what you were talking, what's his name? Paul
Chek.
Yeah, Paul Chek, like going into that early imprinting, it's so important because it literally informs the rest of our life, and I think lifetimes. So to go back and reorganize all the information we've been taking in, to go back and work with those earliest primal first relationships that we have had brings us into right relationship with a medicine like ayahuasca. It brings us into right relationship with the earth. And all of that wisdom is accessed through our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
My experience, which I know that for many, and I see it a lot, and I really do my best to support a lot of people in this area in terms of plant medicine integration, but I can see that because of the kinds of spaces that people are sitting in and the unresolved birth or pre-birth trauma that people carry, are making, and then sitting in ceremony without coherence of those early times. For example, let me give you an example because it's kind of out there.
Yeah.
But someone who had a highly medicalized birth or was, came in via a belly birth, a cesarean, could easily come into an ayahuasca ceremony really looking for the antidote or just needing to be rescued. Or if they had a highly medicalized birth where many, they weren't the initiators of their process navigating that first experience, then this is something that's happening to them. In fact, all of life is happening to them.
Right.
So how do we actually come back into this co-creative symphony with life? So I guess what I was about to say was that, like, in my experience, the plants have been incredibly grounding allies. But I recognize they've grounded me here on Earth, got me into my body. But I can see that I was raised very close to the earth and very close to the land, and I'm so grateful for that. But I can see that as these things become more popularized and widespread globally, there's a lot of ungrounding happening. And going back to my kind of theory about how ayahuasca is a living embodiment or manifestation of the Kundalini is something that is, this is like a lifelong maturation process. This is a lifelong process of our maturity. And so I think it's really important to for us to question and keep questioning, keep inquiring inside of ourselves.
Yeah.
How do we really get into our bodies? Like, how do we really incarnate? And how can we assist this mother wisdom, creation, energy to move in us and to be directed in ways that are healthy, that are fueling like healthy relationships? And man, this isn't easy.
Oh,
I'm talking about it, but like,
yeah.
I am in no way exempt. I am fully engaged with this process myself.
Well, and it's interesting because I mean, something that just was inspired in me as you were speaking too is I find it so interesting just the correlation between the Kundalini being this serpent like energy, and even from what I know of just the development of the embryo, we have this serpentine like movement actually as we are being developed in the womb. And so like actually I feel like even not only on an energetic level are we restoring the energetic flow between the chakras and all of that, but actually that serpentine like movement of the spine and all of that.
Absolutely.
And yeah, definitely.
There's an amazing, beautiful man named Dr. Stuart Savatsky, and he has been a Kundalini practitioner since the early 70s. And he talks about this. He talks about he wrote an amazing book called, I thought it might be close to me, but it's not, but Advanced Spiritual Intimacy. And he talks about the Kundalini as this lifelong maturation process. And he has I don't know if it's in this book actually, but he has an incredible paper titled Kundalini, The Complete Maturation of the In-Souled Body. I totally recommend reading it. And he points out how the Kundalini is first microscopically visible in the nucleus of the fertilized ovum. That's the double helix DNA. This is who we are. To be out of relationship with this is very interesting.
Right. Well, and it's like, I feel like it really reminds me too that a lot of the time I feel like it's easy to have life happening to us, or we're looking outside of ourselves and trying to figure out what we can bring. But actually, I feel like the real healing is actually clearing away all of the programming, all the gunk, all of the things, whether it be mental programming or, things in our physical body that are not serving us to our highest extent. But like once we clear those, I mean, our body, innate wisdom, that serpentine like structure is the source of all creation. That is like it is breathing things into existence. It's actually like continuing to allow us be who we are and live vitally. And so when we clear all that stuff away, we're actually just allowing the body to do what it naturally knows to do in its natural homeostasis. And it's like, it's not as, I feel like a lot of these things, like the plants or even these practices that we find ourselves doing can just help us actually see that it's not as difficult, as maybe the westernized world has made it seem to be healthy.
Right. It's hard work, but it doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be dreadful. It doesn't need to be like that. I use the analogy of birth for everything, but birth is life. And we're constantly, it's not meant to be painful. It's not meant to be suffering. It's growth, getting born, growing, maturing, changing, transforming is not a pathology.
Yeah, right.
And all of these things, like when we're born, then we go through puberty, then we mature, we continue to mature. I mean, puberty for a teenager is just a very like poignant moment where you can see, oh, there's a maturation thing happening here in this human. But that continues as we go through our life, every time we go through change and transition. And I think, or transformation. And I think, it goes without saying, that if we look at these last couple of years, everybody is re-experiencing everything. Everything's coming up for everyone, and everyone is experiencing this differently. Like, I quite resonate with you. 2020 was one of the highlight years of my life. I was doing what I came here to do all year, and it's only continued to open up new worlds and of possibility. And I think it's very interesting. You actually, just by listening to people's stories of what the past 2 years, I guess it's maybe 3 now or whatever, but that, that window of time, if we just listen to those stories, you can actually, if you listen to people's stories about what that time was for them, you could probably, I would bet money on it, that you would also inadvertently be listening to people's birth stories.
Yeah.
People opening and just curious about the wonders of this new unknown, or like were people closing and contracting or scared or feeling like the world was closing in on them, or that they, what was going on? So we have to get back in touch with our experience at the earliest moments of our existence in order that we can re-script the story and experience a new, or co-create, or hold ourselves lovingly and deeply as we want to contract and we want to close, that we can in our body and open and soften and allow life to move through us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm very curious too, because I know a little bit from what you've told me in the past, but like, so were you a doula first before you understood like more of the understanding of birth trauma and things like that, or?
So, how could I put this? Because there's really no beginning and no end, but essentially I have extensive doula training. And I think one of the reasons my doula training is not conventional doula training. So, for example, I apprenticed with one of my most admired and respected teachers and mentors in Kauai, Hawaii. In her doula training, she does many trainings, including death doula training and many different things. But it's really rooted in healing your own birth. Like, to show up and serve and support a family in birth, you need to be coherent with your own birth experiences. It would be like showing up to lead a ceremony or to hold space for the ceremony, but not having done any of your inner work. I mean, I can't believe it. To me, it's just like, oh my God. So we have doctors and midwives and people showing up to support birth who aren't coherent with their own births. When I remember attending my first birth and feeling like, oh my God, how are people doing this if they're not coherent? Because it's not if your own stuff comes up, it's when and to what extreme. Because memory is not what we remember. Memory is in our bodies. So it's coming up. So people are walking into the field of birth and projecting their entire stuff into the room, onto that birthing mother, onto that baby, without even realizing it. Even if that's just a feeling that they're holding in their body.
Yeah.
People in a birth room are holding, then that energy is felt by the baby that's getting born, and likely the mother who's open and porous as well. I will relate this to ceremony because that's something you can relate to, and I think they're both highly entheogenic experiences. Birth, probably the most entheogenic experience a human can have, is like imagine the person who's supposed to be loving you and supporting you through your journey of ayahuasca, but they're just tight and holding, and they don't know why, but they just can't relax. I mean, this is creating a whole other, it's creating a whole other field that. So yeah, I guess what I would say is that Barbara's doula training, Barbara is the founder and director of the Sacred Birthing School on Hawaii, is really rooted in healing our own births. And it's an 18, like 4.5 month program. In America, doula training is a weekend course. And so I just thought, they're really training doulas to show up and support women inside of the medical, industrial, obstetrical model.
Yeah.
You know, I always say I attended 2 hospital births, my first and my last. And
Yeah.
it's not, and I really mean this, it's not because I don't think that those women need support. In a lot of ways, they need the most. I just could not stand there and say, it's okay, breathe, while they're being completely violated.
I mean, violated. I mean, the noises, I mean, just the sterileness of it, like the energy fields. I mean, now we're having smart hospitals full of electromagnetic frequencies and all sorts of things. And I mean, then on top of that, all of the medical drugs that are used. And, I'm all for Western medicine when there becomes an emergency situation that needs to be an acute situation. But at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, it's like the original imprint of our human experience. So it's like, no wonder we're living in a traumatized society.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a whole conversation on its own, but I think I just really reconciled inside of myself and said, okay, this is not why I'm here. And I know that we can birth humans in love and trust, and that we can show up for women and men and families and give them the support that they obviously need and truly deserve.
Yeah.
And so,
well, I mean,
so I didn't go by to kind of tie that in. I don't go by doula. And I do, I mean, it's pretty much impossible to really contain by title any of it. My work is so vast, but I think I really feel as though it's important to be able to educate people on the medical model of birth, on the midwifery model of birth, and on the free birthing model of birth, so that people can consciously navigate whatever realm they are choosing, and that they can make fully informed decisions based on knowledge of all the alternatives. And I think that this is really, really important because we need to birth humans who are sovereign beings, that they believe in themselves, they trust themselves, they can discern between what's theirs and not theirs. And if the people who are growing them or housing them while they're growing in the womb are not able to do that for themselves, it is not possible to birth humans that think for themselves. It's just not. It doesn't work like that. That's not how human development works. Consciousness precedes the development.
Yeah. Well, and it's surprising to me how many people still discount the fact that even, what the mother is experiencing, whether it's a stress in her life or even, something going on with the relationship between her and the father. All these play into also what stresses the child is feeling and what it's going through mentally, emotionally, and even in the womb. It's like, it's very interesting that a lot of people that I've asked before of, maybe what was going on when your mom was pregnant with you, they think it's like woo woo, like, what are you talking about?
This should be on every single medical history form.
Yeah.
When you go to the doctor,
Yeah.
If you're going for something physical, mental, or emotional, which I don't know what else you'd be going for. But I mean, we're smiling about these things, but just because it's as we remember, it's like common sense.
Yeah. Well, that's why I laugh. I don't laugh. I mean, it's painful to understand.
It's just
And my
funny
goes
that, like, to think of how far we got.
absolutely. I mean, definitely. It's well, and it's very interesting because even bringing it back to the medicine, I feel like one of the things that was really mind blowing for me is in my first experience, I experienced what I perceive as my birth, and just seeing the magic and the beauty of that and what that really meant, and my soul choosing my mother, and all of these different parts of, like, seeing how magical that actually was as an experience, rather than just like, oh, I was just born or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then that also was like tied in with these visceral animal experiences with like a wolf at one point, or like a coyote or some type of dog-like figure, to like an experience with like a falcon and all these different things. And I didn't know, at the time, I didn't know what to make sense of it. I was just like, okay, that was really a trip. And I mean, it definitely showed me a lot, but like, how do I make sense of that? And then when I was talking to James, he was like, have you ever heard of Stanislav Grof? And I was like, no, who's Stanislav Grof? And he like turned me on to basically the whole understanding of, what Stanislav Grof's research was, which was like mapping out the perinatal matrices and understanding like how there's actually a correlation between someone's birth and what trauma they're experiencing, and possibly still living out in their own day-to-day lives at this moment in time. Like that's a wild thing to realize too.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Every single day of our life is a representation of our birth. Every day of our life, we're re-experiencing it. And especially, and mostly, it's mostly, and to a greater degree, when we go through change, transition, endings, new beginnings, anytime you're leaving, your reality of what when you go from moving New York, just going to LA and just not knowing what's before you, you're re-experiencing. That's a threshold. When you end a relationship and begin a new one, like all the feelings and the sensations that you have that come up with those moments in life are indicative of what you were experiencing, and likely what your mother was experiencing when you were coming into the world.
Yeah. Actually, random question. Like, is there, I don't know what the right word is. It wouldn't be like avoiding birth, but like, what does it mean when, or if there is even a meaning, because I know there's many different interpretations by different people, but like when a child's labor is like long, of course, it could be just a physical level, but I feel like, for instance, my labor, I think was like 20 hours or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like just joked that my soul was like, no, like I'm still with the all. Like I like this place. Like I don't want to go out into the world yet. Like, but I don't know to what extent that is true or what you understand about that.
I mean, I don't doubt that was part of your experience. There's no... Labor can be 5 days, 4 days, 3 days. I came in 2 hours. That's normal. 5 days is normal. All of these things are normal.
Yeah.
There's no unnormal. Every being is different, and every being has a very different journey to make throughout their life.
Yeah.
And so their birth journey should not be interrupted and should only be trusted, because the way in which, you may have needed more time to come to this choice on your own to come into this life.
Yeah.
And that's your decision to make. It's not mine. It's not the doctor's. It's nobody's. And that could have been, babies go through the mom goes through this as well when she's laboring. It's palpable. You can feel it in the field. Nobody better say a word when she's in the space of her labor. And it could be 10 minutes, and it could be 2 hours or 5 or 6 hours where she's laboring, and she's going through this reckoning that there's no turning back, and there's only one way, and that is through. And the baby is having that experience as well. And I am very, very really able to hear what babies are saying before birth and even before conception. It's very clear that they're going through that existential process, and that belongs to them. Babies are allowed to make that choice on their own and take as much time as they need. They will always trust the timing of life. They will grow and move through their lives knowing that life happens in perfect timing, not second-guessing themselves, being able to initiate their own life without fear of someone going to come in and break it up, or whatever. Lots of different scenarios. This belongs to us. One of the reasons why we're not living in our bodies is because we weren't respected while our souls came in the period of time where the soul was coming into the body. So the soul never got to come into the body because it was so traumatized whilst it was going through that process.
Yeah.
So this is the work now we're all doing. So imagine your children with you knowing what you know and you healing these parts of your own story. You will be able to create an entirely different reality for your children where it will just be totally different. Our children won't grow asking the same things that we are. They're not coming to do the same kind of transgenerational healing that we're here doing. They're not. They're coming from other star systems and planets. They are not. They're coming to teach and lead and heal and innovate. Like they're just going. They don't need to spend the time of their lives and every ounce of money that they make trying to wake up and heal themselves. No.
With a lot. I mean, I think even me having a brother that is 12 years younger, I feel like at an early age too, I kind of talk about it sometimes as part of my awakening, is like having my brother there who is just this infant at that part of my development. Me and him had such a deep psychic telepathic communication network going on. And he was opening up to so many understandings actually now, as I also kind of reflect on the fact that when I'm in touch with certain animals and have these experiences where I'm maybe playing with an animal, and then the person that owns the animal comes up and is like flabbergasted that animal is playing with me, because they're like, this is a really traumatized animal and I've never seen someone play with this animal. But like I've gotten permission from it just by having this telepathic communication with it. And I feel like my brother was one of the first people that showed me how tangible and palpable that really is when you're experiencing it with these children. But all that being said, I feel like as I more and more experience, even in when I'm working at Erewhon, I see these certain children that I can tell they're very evolved souls. Like they're like giving me actually confirmation that I'm okay. I'm not giving them confirmation that they're okay. They're reminding me that everything is in alignment, and just by like looking at me with their piercing gaze. And it's like, I feel like, I guess also at this time in our evolution of humanity, I feel like a lot of these, intuitively, I've just felt a lot of these souls that are very deeply gifted, multidimensional souls from many different planes of existence are coming and inhabiting the earth to actually help us kind of raise the vibration to a certain levels.
Totally. Yeah, they aren't bound. Okay, they're coming into this dimension where things are very slow and dense. But I'm still under the impression that they aren't bound to the same kind of time that we are, that they're coming in to literally catapult us into a new way of being in the world. Like, they're not concerned with figuring out what we've been doing or fixing that or cleaning that mess. It's like, no, we're just going forward.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of what we're talking about is really coming down to the work that we have the capacity to do the work inside of ourselves that is terminating what's been. And we have the capacity to be really honest with ourselves and honest with the future generations to say, hey, this is my stuff. This doesn't belong to you. So that they can just come in, like we can create space for them to incarnate, to emerge fully into their lives. This is really important because these are not regular things.
Yeah, that's right.
There's some amazing things I'd love to talk to you about. Like, I've had some good insights about the operating systems of the beings that are coming to Earth and how music is absolutely essential for them, to help them to come through, to soften their experience of like coming into our reality, because it reminds them of where they came from.
Wow.
And some ceremonial work.
A lot of insight. Even just you touching on that already gives me a lot of insight into why I am following down this path, because I feel very called to, I'm learning more and more that the musical gifts that we all contain inside our DNA, but the ones that, I've been exploring just as being a professional musician and then taking it back into the healing space and even playing in ceremony and understanding the impact that has. It definitely is something I feel called to share a lot of this wisdom that I feel like I've just had passed on to me, to children, and even just holding space and for children and their process, because I feel like I love that you shared that, though. I would love to hear more about it, honestly. So whatever you're willing to share.
Well, I do a fair amount of work with couples preconception, and like that involves a lot of healing their own births, but opening up the channel of communication between them and the soul that's choosing them to be parents, to be their parents, and a lot of prenatal work, and also create space where parents, once they've had children, can continue in their ceremonial work and the work with the plants. So creating very family-centric ceremonial spaces. And so in being in ceremony also with these babies is really remarkable. But being in ceremony or not, honestly, when I've been like this for a long time, I've been communicating with unborn babies since I was a very small child.
Wow.
And when I'm in the presence, of a pregnant woman, I feel almost as if I'm on, ayahuasca, you could say. Like my entire feeling shifts, where it's like, oh yeah, the holy is in the room. And I've had women come to me, for fertility, being concerned that maybe they can't conceive. And the moment I enter the space, I'm very aware that she's already pregnant. And it's only been days. So I'm just sharing this. If anyone listens to this, I'm not like a a baby catcher or anything like that. There's nothing special here, but just to give you an idea of like how my system really shifts and attunes to that consciousness. It's very palpable for me, whether there's 2 of us or 3 of us in the room.
Yeah.
I can sense the spirit and the energy.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, for many levels of what I've, many ancient wisdoms of and the cultures that really have a reverence for the whole birth process. But even I think we had just texted back and forth a little bit about it, but I've been diving really deep into biogeometry because it feels like very in alignment with what I think my soul is probably very familiar with on a energetic level of understanding vibration and music and harmonics.
Totally.
A rabbit hole in itself, but the one of the parts of Ibrahim Karim's work in his book, where he's discussing, all of his insight of what he's understood from the ancient Egyptian practices and radiesthesia and all of these different ways of architecture and creating shape and harmony. But basically he talks about how pregnant women actually are emitting what he calls the BG3 energy, which is, the 3 centering energy qualities of a sacred power spot, and so it's really interesting, because I totally can see how you would be able to feel that, because it really is, it's like our cultures were able to find water in the past because they could be in touch with that same energetic quality. And it is life force. It is actually like the strongest life force there is.
And isn't it, I mean, can we just sit with that for a second? It is the strongest life force there is. It is, isn't it amazing that we've forgotten what birth is, that we can have a pregnant woman in the room and no one even mentions that she is channeling the energy of the entire universe right here and now in the middle of the, it's like, I feel like if we really remembered what is birth, we would be lining up at the women who were pregnant at her door, finding ways to creatively support her and love her and cheer her on. Like, it's just amazing. It's just amazing.
I mean, even I know, like, as someone that's also, as I become more open and sensitive to like my innate being, I mean, yeah, even when a pregnant mother is in the presence of me, like I just feel myself soften. Like I feel like there is like an innate, a divine masculine part of myself too that is just so like enlivened by just seeing that existence of truly like the most divine feminine thing there is. I mean, I feel like that was the original initiation of society for women, was really just birth.
Exactly.
And now it's the fertility stuff. I mean, it's like, and then on top of that, even just after women are, having a baby, there's like almost no education on rehabbing the body or how to take care of yourself or how to even be easy. It's like this go mentality of like the just like patriarchal society, I guess, just like pushing women to try and be like men, when women are really like the most amazingly magical beings existing. Like it's like men are the seed and women are the soil. It's like we need each other. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, yeah, it's just crazy that we don't respect that birth process, but even just women in general, like I feel like why society is sick in general, but especially women with all these autoimmune conditions and all of these different processes and not being in touch with their cycles and their moon cycle. And all of this, I feel like, is a result of, just getting lost in the Maya of technology and, just the centeredness around like, we just got to keep going forth rather than actually letting women be the magic beings that they are and exist and act, and I don't know, educating our society that there is this whole process. And even for the child's health, I mean, these women don't get to spend time with their children because they have to go and work again. Like whatever, I don't even know what it is, like 4 weeks after or something like that. That's, some maternity leaves are like so short.
Well, there's so many things to touch on here, Adam. I mean, we'll be here for a week, or we'll eventually we'll be like, okay, so now what day is it? It's Friday. Okay, so now we have the Fridays hour and a half lounge time with Adam and Victoria. But no, but like, you know, women who birth naturally, who produce their own birthing hormones, which are the strongest hormones, strongest opiates on our planet. They are the hormones of love. They are the hormones of euphoria, of ecstasy. And they facilitate, if they remain intact and synthetic hormones are not administered, which ultimately bring the natural physiological pituitary produced birth hormones to a halt, then her primal mother instincts will stay intact. And even if she was planning to go back to work in 4 weeks, she will change her mind, even if she says no to $5 million. And
Wow.
and that's just the truth.
I love that.
Women who naturally birth their babies, you know, there's a word that we call falling in love, bonding, or I call bonding falling in love. The whole pregnancy and the labor and the birth are designed intelligently by nature to set up this most phenomenal experience that we call falling in love after birth. And that whole thing, the whole cascade, is designed by nature to set up a lifetime relationship. A lifetime relationship. So, you know, if women weren't drugged and medicated and birthing in sterile environments, 5 tigers could try to walk out with her baby and will not succeed.
Yeah.
It won't happen because her mother hormones are. And so what are we actually medicating? That's the question. And it's mind-boggling to a certain degree how on earth we ever got so educated in the first place. How on earth did a man manage to educate women that she didn't know how to give birth, but he needed to do it for her? That is impressive. Only could that happen with some fancy drugs. And yeah, that's really impressive. So I think, you know, actually, in order to do things differently, we don't need to educate, we need to unlearn. And I think the best way to unlearn is just to remember. That's why I guide people back to remember their own births, because once you remember that, it's none. It doesn't matter if you are a GP or you've been, you know, delivering baby for the past 10 years in the OR. Once you remember your own experience, and we all remember our own experiences, we just need to be guided in a way that can facilitate those memories to come to the surface. Once you remember, you can't unremember.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's the most efficient way to, and in my experience, I think that inevitably, okay, we're talking about our own births inform every day of our lives, and our births come up big time when we go through change and transition. So everyone's birth is coming up big time these last few years. But for sure, our own births as women come up, and we re-experience our own births when we go to give birth. That's inevitable. So I think one of the best ways to improve birth outcomes is for that birthing mama to heal her own birth and deeply re-imprint that story. But that's also important for the dad.
Yeah.
Because he's inevitably going through a transformative process as well. And that is also some of the work that I do, is actually supporting men as they go through that transformative journey.
Yeah.
Motherhood.
Yeah. How does one get started on investigating their birth or healing or becoming aware of their birth?
Well, they come and talk to me. There's actually, I'm sure there are many people doing that work, but at the same time, there's not many people doing that work. And the way that I do it, and that I've been initiated to do it from my teacher in Kauai, is actually very different than Stan Grof's approach. Yeah, it's not. I love Stan's work. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
It's very different. It's not aggressive. It's not breath work, that kind of thing. It's actually just a process of getting out of the thinking brain and getting into the body. And so I do it in 4 sessions. The first 2 sessions are guide them. It's a process of getting into the body, opening up this our cellular archives, if you will, through different exercises, and then me guiding them back to revisit their birth, and then going backwards, 3rd trimester, 2nd trimester, 1st trimester, the conception and even preconception experience. And then I focus a lot on the integration piece, because it's like ceremony. You can go and get all the information you want, but how do we integrate this, and how do we actually restitch a new story into our life? So I focus on the re-imprinting. So I do 2 re-imprinting sessions. The first one happens within a week of the guided journey. And then the second one happens 6 to 12 weeks later, once they've had an opportunity to live in their body and to notice their life. Then I check back with them.
Wow. And do you feel like something that has actually been coming to the surface for me as I, do the inner work and just enter into more, relationships and dating and things like that? Like, do you feel like, it's a very wide-ranging question, but like, do you feel like the way that, there's all these different understandings of attachment and our needs being met, and like, do you feel like there's certain people that are activating that in some way, and how does that interplay with relationship in general?
Well, it's our birth and pre-birth experiences will come up most in relationships. Those first relationships that we had, which is generally our mother. I will give a voice to this, but this is a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
For me, and
we're gonna have to have multiple of these.
But I'll just give a voice to this piece, which is like, for me, and actually studies have shown that maybe 60 or 80% of our population were conceived as a multiple, a twin or a multiple. So this is not something that's known very much. I think it's really something that we should bring awareness to more. Again, when people are struggling, why don't we look at the prenatal life, right? So I was conceived as a twin. And so in my experience, at least the way I remember my experience, the first relationship and person I bonded with wasn't my mother, it was my twin. So I was about to say our first relationship, which is usually our moms, but not always, such in the case of that. Okay, so but those early primal relationships they inform all of our relationships. When you heal your birth, you heal all your relations. But also, I want to say, prenatal healing and birth and pre-birth healing, it happens in layers. It happens over the course of your lifetime. And life continues to provide you opportunities to work with different aspects and different levels of your birth, because you're continuously re-experiencing your birth as you go through life. You can't possibly do it all. The birth imprinted your life. So as life unfolds, you learn more about your birth. So when you begin this work, you're literally just opening up a doorway to this realm of healing, which is absolutely essential for your process of incarnating.
Yeah.
You're just opening a doorway. There's nowhere to get to. And I've come to discover that, our experiences in life, we tend to think that our early childhood experiences are our core wound, or our early childhood traumas are like our core primal wounds. For example, like I lost my father when I was 2 years old, and he took his life. So one would think, and this being a core part of what I work with in my life, one would think that's my original wound.
Yeah.
She lost her dad at 2 years old. That's the capital T trauma. That's it right there. No. That recapitulated the tragic loss that I experienced in utero. So it's like that second loss in my life of my dad was yet again this little girl learning the people that I love leave.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the first time I experienced that. But to everyone on the outside, it would be seen that way.
Yeah.
Fast forward as I, go through life, and this is just, I have many prenatal memories, but this is just one example. I had a friend who, I'm going to get really real here, but I don't know how to not keep it real. I hope it's okay. I'm going to get real. Okay. I go fast forward through life, and one of my dear friends who I lived with, so just look at that. I lived with her. What a symbolism of I lived with my twin in the same house, you could say. So I lived with her, and she was killed when I went to Peru for the first time back in many years ago. When I took my first trip to Peru, while I was away, she was murdered. And so that was a couple years healing process for me. And it wasn't until way later, it will be also part of my life that I think it has fueled a lot of what I do in my life, because birth is, and pre-birth is, the origins of health and disease and violence and all of it. But I went through a few years of survival's guilt, and it wasn't until later that I realized, oh my God, this isn't the first time I've had this. Is just echoing at such a level, because I actually experienced that in the womb. Why do I get to make it and they don't?
Wow.
And I've twinned many people, oh, they're my soulmate, or this is my soul sister, this is my soul brother, So we do that, and as you hear me talk, you might do that yourself, or know many people that we do.
I definitely do that myself. It's something I'm sometimes I wonder for myself that I get so excited about certain people that I almost feel like I may just be projecting my soul brother, or my twin flame, or all these spiritual,
all these things. I think that they are deeply rooted in our conceptions, actually.
Yeah.
They're
Thanks
hiding
a lot.
in plain sight.
Yeah, I mean, it's making me wonder. Like, I was told, I remember a long time ago by like a psychic that I was like conceived as like a twin, but like with a like a woman. And so like I guess there was kind of supposedly this point, uh like I haven't viscerally experienced this, but it was really interesting. She was just telling me that basically, um like we weren't going to be able to survive if we were both there, so I was the one that like went forth, and in a way I took a piece of her with me, and like I was like very fascinated by that insight, just because of course I could meditate on that for a long time and think about all the experiences, and also wondering, how that plays into my own attachment of certain, I feel like certain women I've dated are very comforting and secure for me, and I feel like secure. And then there's other women that activate some kind of need in me to prove myself or be, like it brings up that anxiety that I want to just be held and loved, so it's like I'm so fascinated by that subject, though, especially how it relates to birth.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can only speak from my own experiences, and I've definitely witnessed a lot of people go back and uncover those memories. And there's many different twin dynamics. So, I experienced my twin as my soulmate. So it was a tragic loss to me in the womb, but not everybody has that. Some people, they didn't want anything to do with their twin or whatever. So it sounds like you had a really positive connection with your twin, and that was a companion. And so the more that you open that doorway, it's been through my life experiences it's been a fairly recent life experience that I opened levels of existential grief that I didn't know a human could feel. That, that was an in utero memory that life presented me to be able to open that more. And if I wasn't coherent with that part of my life, that in utero part of my history, then I could have easily projected this grief and this pain onto the person that was involved in this experience with me. So for sure, in our romantic relationships, these things are absolutely coming up. I would say too, these are big, because I work with a lot of men when they're becoming dads, and all of their stuff with their moms. For all of us, it comes up, but the difference is that the mom is mothering, and she can provide for the baby in ways that the man just cannot. And so the relationship with the mom, the mother, with the partner can often trigger the mother wound.
Wow.
Your attachment experiences with your mother will absolutely come up with your partners, and especially when she becomes a mother and starts mothering, like if she maybe is attached to the baby in a way that your experience, or in a way that you weren't able to experience with your mom, I'm just making this up, then that could trigger you on a subconscious level. And so this would be really important to work with, because our early primal experiences are coming up big time.
Yeah.
You see it a lot when people become parents, and it's like, oh, why am I feeling like this towards my partner or towards my baby? I should be, but it's not about anyone else. It's about your unconscious implicit memories are maybe coming up. And so as you work with those things and become more coherent with them, it will allow you to come into a more healthy orientation inside of your relationships. It doesn't mean that the pain won't still be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
but it can create more space for that relationship to go deeper and
And communication and being open to.
yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I feel like, I mean, it is very interesting too. I feel like there's such a balance. I feel like coming from a divine order that is hard to put into words, but I feel that, um, the wholeness of men has been lost in its own right, just the way that like women have been wronged. And I feel that it's like there's just so many different roots to it, but it's really interesting because we have so much of like a kind of fatherless society where fathers like are abandoning their children, and all of these different rites of passages of actually becoming a man, and what that means is being so skewed by so many different forces that it's very
Right.
it's its own podcast and and discussion for sure, but it.
What's cool though, Adam, and I'll just throw this out there, is that actually in birth, the father's hormones change as well. So he's going through a transformational process emotionally, spiritually, but also physiologically. And
Wow.
so, but what's required is that he is present. That's all that's required, actually. He's present during the pregnancy and definitely during the labor and the birth. And when that happens, and, we have a normal physiological birth that's not medicated and intervened upon, then her hormones change big time. But his hormones change as well. So birth is actually designed to transform two ordinary humans into superhumans, or some call them parents.
Yes.
It's designed to, it's not just the birth of a baby and the birth of a mom, it's the birth of a family.
Yeah.
So it was also, really kind of clever to take the man out of the birth rooms. When our mothers were being born, men weren't even allowed in the birth room. He had to stay outside.
Wow.
So there's so much, this isn't just about physical healing. This is about what are we really doing when we opt for this medicalization of birth. I mean,
Well, I see how that it really is the root of so much of people's pain is definitely rooted in this, and it's just something I feel so inspired to share more about and help people understand, because it really is like it's a missing key that is right under our noses.
I actually love working with men, and I've come to discover that, and I only discover it mainly through the prenatal work, and working with couples, preconception and things like this. Or if men want to work on their own births, I discover it that way, which is very common. But I come to discover that men really want this support, and they really need it. Like, they need it and they want it. It's just like, and so I learned so much through just being a witness and mirroring men and their experience. I mean, wow, you're so right. It's like, this is we are coming back. We're coming back into right relationship with all of it. We're coming back into a more balanced way.
Yeah, like really feel like, I mean, yeah, it's inspiring, because I feel like there's all these amazing forces at work that, of course, we still have to step up to the plate and do our individual work It's not going to just be divinely done for us, but it's like I can sense that a lot of people are actually really hungry for information and understanding about themselves, and it's got a domino effect to actually, resonate throughout the world, in a way that, I mean, they talk about how it doesn't. There's really just like a tipping point where it's like when a certain amount of people are awake enough and are at a level of consciousness that they're willing to look at their shadow and the unconscious shadow of humanity and do that work, that it just automatically starts opening all the other people that may be asleep or scared to explore that, like, right open.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this.
I love that you decided to like make this time and record this call, because I kind of want to listen to it.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely, I'm excited to share this because it's right in the ballpark of exactly all the things that I want people to hear and share. And, I feel like a lot of these years, in the last 2 or 3 years, has really been seeing that, a lot of the stuff that I've been experiencing on a personal level and this is for everyone really, but we all have our own unique gift and value and experiences that are really valuable for people to share. But I feel so blessed to just, have people be exposed to people like you and, all the people that have been in my life that are really, telling this divine wisdom that needs to be heard to help people wake up.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Definitely do this again if you ever want to talk about anything more specific. I think we talked about, what do they say? Everything under the rainbow today.
Yeah.
But like, if you ever, I'm not very good at staying on track, but if you want to try to keep me on track on a certain topic, I'm willing to give it a shot.
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a perfect experience of giving people a little taste of all the different understandings and where they might find interest in it. But yeah, absolutely. I will for sure be following up, because there's definitely some nitty gritty stuff that I want to get into for sure, just like exploration and understanding.
Amazing work you're doing, Adam. I feel so happy for you, just in the way that you're self-directing and blazing your own path and your own trail. And I'm no doubt you're helping a lot of people on the way.
Yeah. And it's only going to get better. And it's all building perfectly and perfect resonance.
Singing your own song.
Yes.
Well, I will wish you a good day and myself a good night.
Yes. Have a wonderful evening. Okay. Awesome.
Bye.
So much love. Much love.
Thank you. Love. Take care. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Mwah.
Thank you so much for tuning into this very special episode. I hope you enjoyed our wide-ranging conversation. If you want to find more about what Victoria is up to, you can follow her on Instagram at luminousbirth. You can also go to her website, which is luminousbirth.earth. And she shares amazing content about fertility and preconception and tools to heal your own birth. And if you like this episode, please go leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts. I would really appreciate that. Or at the least, if you feel that there's a friend that you want to share this with that will be inspired by our conversation, I would love that. I hope you have an amazing day and stay tuned for the next one.